With all that is going on as far as injustice and justice goes in the United Kingdom, and the utter failing of many different constabularies and investigative units, I thought I'd take the opportunity to highlight an incident where resources are being wasted and where they should have gone instead. So we're going to address two articles under one banner as a way of taking shots at two different wings of the police force. The first would be this rather entertaining idea of investing money into investigating an officer who now faces the sack for using what is being charitably called a racist term, whiter than white, in a briefing to colleagues about being faultless in their inquiries. Now, for those that don't know, whiter than white is an idiom used for usually morally beyond reproach. Never do anything wrong. And it was obviously used to mean officers' actions should be beyond reproach. That is the full context. I know I pretty much just said the same thing as the title. But as a complaint has been made over apparent racial connotations of the phrase, an investigation has now been launched. Colleagues are supposedly, reportedly upset that the man's career has been hit and he faces a probe lasting up to a year for uttering a phrase which is widely used around the country without controversy. I would assume the reason why is because white is not a good thing to say, nor is the existence of white people. Now, a probe like this costs money. An investigation like this costs money. This is a waste of money. There are many terms that are allowed to be used, and in context, they're fine. Whiter than white is used on a regular basis to describe things like good dental hygiene. It is really that simple. A well-painted ceiling. Whiter than white. It is a term that generally makes no sense to me. How do you get whiter than white? Seriously, it's just an idiom. But of course somebody had to take offence, and in doing so has put somebody, a rather innocent person who uttered a completely innocuous phrase, in a position where they are now potentially going to lose their job. It really sucks. Now, of course, if Scotland Yard are going to be consistent, they're going to probably fire them because context doesn't matter. What the judge decides the context is, or whether it is relevant, or whether or not it is hateful, really matters. I think everyone knows what I'm talking about when I say that. Even though it was not Scotland Yard, I think we all know what I meant, regardless. The obvious sarcasm should have given it away. Now, before we move on to where I think the money for this probe should in fact go, I want to finish up this article to paint the full picture. It is understood the detective in the Met Police case has been put on restricted duties after being served misconduct notice in June. What a waste of a police officer. It's not as if we have a shortage of them to begin with for something utterly trivial. If this was in June and we are now in September, you have wasted 3 months of this man's career. He will be interviewed by the Independent Office for Police Conduct at a later date. Now, a spokesperson for the IOPC has said, I can confirm that as part of Operation Embley into allegations of serious corruption and malpractice within the Directorate of Professional Standards, a notice of investigation has been served on an officer informing them we are investigating the alleged use of language deliberately intended to offend and that had racist undertones. A notice is issued to inform an officer at the earliest opportunity following an allegation and to safeguard their interests. So now on to the other article that is relevant to the police force, where they have not performed their duty, and it is one that has actually got a bit of an age to it, in that this took place many years ago and is a damning statement for just how feckless the police are, where a white English girl was raped by her new husband, someone she was forced to marry. Not the first husband, I might add. She was forced into marriage twice, and was raped by her husband within minutes of being married. She was also made to abort 8 times. This is one of the nastiest cases I've heard about, but when it came to investigating child grooming, certainly around the time this young lady was taken, the police did nothing, and there are many reasons the police will give, but the one that is touted most is because the police were afraid of being called racist. This excuse is not, will not, ever be good enough to explain why you let so many poor children down. Now when I say the money from the other case needs to be invested in this, I mean it needs to be invested into investigating child grooming gangs, because it has taken long enough for police to actually do something about it, and this case involving Sarah is one of the nastiest cases that we get to hear about. And I'm going to read a few paragraphs from this article so you understand why I think this. Sarah is not a willing bride. She's being made to marry a member of the gang that effectively forced her into sex slavery after abducting her in a Tesco car park in the English suburbs one autumn afternoon. Her captivity lasted for 12 years. Within minutes of her wedding picture being taken, the white English girl was pushed upstairs into a bedroom and raped by her new husband, a man she had set eyes on for the first time only half an hour earlier. It was just one of the unimaginable torments Sarah endured after she was kidnapped as a shy 15-year-old. She had never had a boyfriend. She was studying at college, hoping to train as a midwife. In the House of Lords, this question was brought up. Is it okay to talk about Islam yet? And many cases have been mentioned, but peers and MPs seem remarkably quiet when it comes to the subject of questioning this. Now, this particular story was brought to the House of Lords by crossbencher Baroness Caroline Cox, who took up the case as the most serious example of sex grooming yet to emerge in this country, where it is known and has been proven that white girls and Sikhs are the targets. They are the ones being broken, they are the ones being abused. It is a damning statement for failed integration that these boys, they reinforce the idea of a rape culture. In fact, because the police did nothing about it, many could argue a rape culture existed because they enabled it. Their inaction to perform their duty to protect and serve meant they let down thousands. Cough, Rotherham, Telford. Do I need to keep coughing? Sarah's family went so far as to ask the police force for help, but they refused to even list her as missing, to which the police kept saying she'll come back, but she never did. Now this all happened 5 years before the scandal of sex abuse of young white girls by street grooming gangs was first revealed in 2010 after investigations by the Daily Mail, which were later on taken over by the government. Whether you like the Daily Mail or not, the fact they broke this, you have to give them respect for that. The all-pervading culture of political correctness at the time of her abduction meant the gangs, often of Pakistani British heritage, imagine my shock, were ignored by police forces that were terrified of being called racist if they pursued them, which is why this complacency bugs me so much. It's why people don't trust the Rozzers, the pigs. They don't trust them, and they have no reason to trust them. Your job is to protect and serve, and you let them down. I wonder if they'd appreciate it more if I was in charge. Because I promise you this, I'd enforce the law to perfection. I refuse to be bullied around. I refuse to let others dictate what I do. I refuse to let others push me or make it so that I am unable to perform my duty. If they interfere, they also go to the ISO cubes. Mandatory sentence, 5 years, for interfering with police business. I honestly have little to no time for the police when it comes to this. Now, to finish up on this article, I want to touch upon the blue blurb bit written on the side of the article, titled, "Why Did No One Do Anything?" The review investigated the police's and the Home Office's lamentable reaction to sex grooming in the late 90s and early 2000s. It told of a teenager called H, who was one of the 1,500 girls abused by sex groomers in Rotherham, South Yorkshire. H's mother told the police her child was in the clutches of a gang, only to be instructed to go and get your daughter yourself if you know where she is. It is not the role of the police to run around after 14-year-olds. Another quote, by the way, which came from parents who were regarded by the police as hysterical time wasters, simply dismissed as silly girls. All of this stems from political correctness gone mad, and many of the cases recently brought to court, cases that finally resulted in convictions, have involved girls who abused up to 2 decades ago, and whose families' cries for help were conveniently ignored for years. When Daily Mail asked the police force involved in Sarah's case why they took so long to react, they replied, Our understanding of and approach to issues such as child sexual exploitation and modern slavery has evolved and improved over the past decade, as is the case with police forces up and down the country. We have had major success stories in recent years in these areas, securing lengthy prison sentences for those perpetrating such crimes, and establishing specialist support services to help victims. Officers are far more aware of issues around vulnerability, while we also have specialist dedicated resources to deal with such cases, including historic ones. Victims of these crimes should have every confidence in our force's ability to tackle criminal exploitation and bring those responsible to justice. They didn't answer the bloody question. The question was, why they took so long to act on Sarah's case. They did not answer. Wow, they all sound like politicians. It can't be because they know they failed her. They failed their city. I may as well be quoting Oliver Queen right now. Anyway, as depressing as this all is, I hope everyone has a lovely Monday, and thank you all for listening.
Oh, goddowns.
In your arse.
Imagine my shock